Does it? Hey, welcome. This is Frontline Trucking. Trucking City's newest outlet for your news and viewpoints on trucking, especially Trucking City's newest outlet for your news. We bring in a story and viewpoints on. I present the premise, especially Trucking City's newest outlet for your news. We bring in a story and viewpoints on. I present the premise. Trucking City's newest outlet for your news. We bring in a story. Welcome to YouTube. I present the premise. Welcome to YouTube's newest outlet for your news. We bring in a story. Welcome to YouTube. I present the premise. Welcome to YouTube's newest outlet for your news. We bring in a story. Welcome to YouTube. I present the premise. Welcome to YouTube's outlet for your news. We bring in a story. Welcome to YouTube. Meantime, let me set the premise. We bring in a story. Welcome to YouTube. Meantime.
In the world of trucking, there's a push for a change in drug testing protocols.
There's a reform group. This group, that is a pro-pot group, is stating that MJ testing took thousands of truckers off the road last year, endangering the supply chain, and are pushing the FMCSA to push it to more oral fluid testing,
alongside increased assistance for those who test positive. Their goal, a system that honors their dignity and their rights. They say current guidelines for THC are too limited. They say join the conversation and let's talk about it. Stick around. Join the conversation and let's talk about it. Stick around. Join the conversation.
The reason for the problem. Okay. I saw some motion in the background. My apologies. And I also saw a couple of comments come up. Somebody said there was a bad echo and it couldn't hear anything. So, yeah. Once again, more technical problems. But hey, it's show business. That happens. We're still going to go on with the show anyway. I'll perfect the art one of these days. Damn it, I said I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. They can't kill me. As a friend of mine pointed out, they're trying to silence me. Anyway, welcome aboard, guys. Thank you for joining us on another Frontline podcast. I've set the premise. We started the conversation earlier in the week, and I will say it was a very spirited conversation, one in which you could not join us for, John. So now is your chance to redeem yourself. No, just joking. Just joking. In terms of testing, all right, I'm on this kick that we need to leave alone the system that works. That's been my stance for the longest time. You know, yes, it's true we're losing drivers. Yes, it's true we're hurting. We're not suffering a shortage. We're not in dire straits. But this particular group called Norm L is now pushing for changes in drug testing modifications. And it's particularly focused on MJUs, as Mother Trucker said. Their particular focus is on that because what they say is currently the urinalysis that exists looks too far back and it's too inclusive of, I guess, all the chemicals that are involved in it. And it looks, I think, up to 60 days out. I think I may be wrong. But when you think about that versus what they're asking for in the change, they're asking for oral. Now, I've got some information and data and research that I did just before the show. Oral is not very inclusive and does nothing, to say the least, of talking about the time frame which the stuff is in your system. So I think there's equal side pros and cons to that argument. So in terms of just the overall effect on our current system, John, what is your opinion and what are your thoughts about making changes at all?
Actually, if there's changes, it should be more strict. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but the problem isn't the driver shortage. The problem isn't that if you can have a drink in your seat, you should be able to smoke, you know what, in your seat. The problem is we're driving 80,000-pound vehicles at highway speeds. If your reaction time is off even a fraction of a second, people die. That's what's important here. It's not your agenda to be able to, you know, make it okay for you to do something you shouldn't be doing anyway when you're driving a commercial vehicle. That agenda needs to be put to the wayside. And for those that say, oh, it takes 60 to 90 days to get out of your system, whatever it is, guess what, guys? That's the technology we have right now. Even if they could swipe and tell if you had it, which they're working on that technology, had it 2 hours ago, does it make it any better? Really?
No, it don't. I mean, I see your question, and the premise of your question is good. We have a new guest. Well, not a new guest. We have a new viewer, somebody I wanted to pay particular homage to, girl in a semi. Her opinion is that they need to give us ladies something bigger than a little cup to aim at. Kudos to you for pointing that out. And welcome to the show, girl in a semi. But yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, in terms of just the marijuana part of it, I mean, our conversation early in the week went kind of off the rails and, you know, went in a completely unpredicted direction. But thanks, Fate Trucking, for that one. But every point he made on that show was a valid, good point. And when you put two guys in a room, you're always going to have a differing of opinion. But staying on topic, you know, spirited debates like that, I love. I'm of the mindset, the old-fashioned mindset, by the way. I'm of the old-fashioned mindset that when you have a system that works, try not to mess with that system, because a lot of times when you do, you run up on unintended consequences, you know? And doing something like going from a developed system like urinalysis, and in some cases blood testing, depending on your stage and restrictions. It's a known standard, and it's a federal standard. And one of the things you pointed out, and you and Scott, yes, we are, he says, okay, says you're responding. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm of the mindset.
Background, real faintly.
Yeah, your background music's still playing.
Oh, I thought I turned it all the way down. I'm using a mouse where I don't usually, so it must have hit it. But anyway,
It's gone now.
A system like this will invite more challenges with staying compliant. Opening a door for contamination of results, that's one of the cons. If you go to oral testing and suddenly decide, well, we're going to do oral rather than urinalysis, there's too much of a risk, scientifically, they've said it, for contamination of results, thereby making that testing result or testing process longer and less accurate. All right. The risk of there being more non-compliant drivers on the road goes up. And there'll also be a larger amount of false positives. That's what I had recorded earlier and did not put on the slide. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, John? I mean, you've been through a number of tests and a number of, you know, stopped, you know, hey, it's your turn. If you go in there thinking, what's the chance I'm going to get flagged for, a false positive? What's going on in your mind?
Well, I'm telling you right now, if there's a high chance of a false positive, that's a dangerous thing because you got people like me. I've been studying for drug tests for, I don't know, 40 years. So I'm pretty good and I know I'm going to be good every time I go in because I don't ever have that issue. But if I came up positive and it
Right.
screws up my trucking career and my family can't make a living at it, that's a problem. That's a big problem. It's not just
Yeah.
a false positive, it's basically career death. And I couldn't
Yeah.
take career death at this moment. So,
Right. Yeah. 7C's in the house says, how about say no to drink or say no to drugs, drink only at home or off duty, anything other than that. If you're caught, pay the price. Abstinence is always the smartest thing, but that's not that was our discussion the other night. You should have been, well, you were there. Slap. That's always the best practice. Abstinence is always the best. But what we're dealing with tonight is, or today, is, and we all face this, every one of us, we're working a job, we're out here doing it, and all of a sudden we get that phone call or that email, and you cannot say no when you get this phone call. Your number came up in the clearinghouse. You now have 24 hours. You have to stop what you're doing, find a local testing center, pee in a cup, go through the process, get it done. That's been the process. I've had it. In fact, I had it happen 3 times in a month. The randomness. That's just how it works. You never know when it's going to happen. It could be 6-month intervals, 2-month intervals, 2-day intervals. It could just it's that random. But imagine that system the way it is, and you're in whatever state, and they do oral, and then you leave 2 months later or 2 days later or whatever the case is. And then all of a sudden you get, boom, oh, you're suspect, or we think your results may have been tainted, or they're not clear enough. Then you have to go back in. So not only is it a compliance issue, but it's a delay. And it becomes a problem because A, the unknown, and B, you're just involved in a system that prior to that worked perfectly fine. We got Fake Trucking in the house joining us. Sounds like he's on the road, so we're only going to hear his audio. God bless it. Say what you will. Scott.
Is this too loud?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're driving this morning.
Yes. Well,
so
my hat's off.
Continue.
Keep it safe and keep between the lines. But what say you about the oral testing versus the current system that works? What's your thoughts?
I think all testing should be thrown out the window.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
All right, devil. No, seriously, tell us how you feel.
All right, bring the meth on. Let's do this.
Yeah. No, I think it should be honestly, probably the most extreme form of testing, and I mean, I heard you real quick talking about delays and if your test comes back a certain way, which when I was a driver manager, I used to manage drivers, right? And I would have to send them in to get drug tests. I would get the drug test results mailed back to me or emailed to me. And you'd be surprised how many come back diluted. Now, not diluted where somebody is tampering with the sample while they're giving the sample, but they might have too much water in their system, that dilutes a urine drug test.
Right.
At least at the facility where the clinic we used to send them to. And if they didn't see any traces of tampering, we just counted it as a drug test. It was a passed drug test. It wasn't a failed drug test or anything like that. We just put it in their driver's folder, you know what I mean?
Right. So then I can assume by the sound of what you're describing me, it sounds as if you actually would like to get rid of the urinalysis, and instead, would you feel better with blood testing straight across the board? Because
So-
really, that's really the only way to get rid of the worries you posed in your argument, plus the uncertainty of tainting or false hope or false positives.
So I'm gonna say something maybe a little controversial. Um,
That's you.
like, well, like, no, I'm not. I mean,
I'm just
I think
picking on you.
I do. Well, no, like I do believe there's careers and jobs that require you not to be under the influence or use any mood altering chemicals. We choose to have these jobs. I also look at it like it's weird that somebody wants hair follicles or a blood test from me. Like, I do look at that as maybe a little bit of an invasion of like my personal, you know, just who I am. You know, hair follicle tests and blood tests. I guess I don't know the actual numbers, but like if I did drugs before I got my CDL, but I have not done drugs since getting my CDL, I don't think it's anybody's business to know before I agreed to this employment that I did anything. I
Right.
kind of look at that as maybe a little invasion of my privacy. You know,
Well, I mean, there's
but
controversial issues
it's
either
just
side of it, but at the same time, the company that hires you also wants to know they're hiring somebody that's trustworthy. So
I agree.
if
And once
as
again,
far
like I
as I'm
said, it's
concerned, yeah, if I'm giving of my time and my reputation, I want to make sure that it's solid before I go into a job. From an employer's from an employer's standpoint, I want to know the guy I'm investing my money in ain't going to screw me over 6 months from now with a bad drug conviction or stiff my load, as it were.
The
So,
thing about a
I
hair
agree with
follicle
that.
test, the thing about a
Yeah.
hair follicle test is that it's not just telling you that they took it, it's telling you how long they took it and how many times
Mhm.
they took it. So
Yeah.
that's why they do hair follicle tests. If there's a baseline that you can establish where look, they're getting high, every day or twice a week,
Mhm.
it's different than they smoked it 6 months ago.
Right. Want to say welcome to
So
WCF
that's why the hair
Invader.
follicle tests came to be.
Yeah. Want to say welcome to WCF Invader. I noticed your comment before we ended last night's live and just didn't notice it fast enough before I hit the end live button. So welcome to today's show. Thank you for tuning in there. JD Jeff joins us. He's a new viewer, it looks like. Have a couple of beers on home time and work under CDL, of course, that's it. But test for fentanyl? I think the current panel of tests we have currently does include fentanyl. Am I wrong? Do you think? I
Yes,
think
it
it
does.
does.
It does.
Yeah. But he's kind of leaning on the same side of the conversation you, me, and Fate Trucking were having the other night, John. So I mean, have a couple of beers and home time to work. I mean, I'm of that same camp too. Just like Fate said the other night, it's one thing to do it at home, but it's another one entirely to do it in the truck. And there needs to be a defined line there. So 7C says, are there really false positive results for drugs and alcohol? Who's running
Yes.
these test sites? Same folks who ran COVID tests. And he's got a question mark on it. I don't know if you can see the screen, Scott, but no, I got to wonder sometimes too, but there are false positives, and even with your analysis, there can be problems. But I think it's far more risky and far more likely to happen with these oral tests that they're trying to push for. What do you think, Scott? You think it's more likely?
I didn't even know they were pushing for oral tests, so I can't comment on that.
Well, yeah, at the start of the show, there is a group called NORMAL. It's a group that's fighting for the legalization of marijuana. And they're the ones that wrote, and by the way, I'll have links to two of the stories featuring this information under the live when this live goes off the air. But they're pushing for it because of the whole legalization of marijuana. Currently, I think 26 states, I think I got the number wrong the other night, is pushing to legalize marijuana. And so far, like you and John said the other night, the issue so far is a federal issue. Okay. Marijuana is so far a state's issue. So it hasn't gone federal yet, but they haven't changed the testing requirements. It still requires your analysis and still requires what it does. But this group wants that change. This group wants it to go federally oral testing only where it comes to marijuana only. So knowing
Well,
that,
I'm sure
what do you think?
I'm sure saliva would tell you kind of like a breathalyzer would for alcohol. That actually kind of makes sense.
Right.
I mean,
Well, what I've looked into when. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott.
No, go ahead.
I looked into this testing when I heard about it, and first of all, it's not very accurate, which is not a good thing for us. Second of all, you're right, it does. It'll let you know if you smoked it 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, or yesterday, and that's about the span of it. It won't let you know any farther out. It's kind of like a breathalyzer.
Right.
I actually would agree. I would find it hard to say it's not very accurate, John. The reason being, and I'm going to share stuff that I've shared on my channel a little bit. I mean, when you get charged and or convicted or put on probation of a crime that requires you to give fingerprints and a DNA sample, and really a DNA sample is anytime you're convicted, well, at least where I live, of a gross misdemeanor or a felony, or put on probation for either one, the way they collect your DNA is through saliva. So like, I gotta believe a saliva test for THC would be pretty accurate, since my DNA is in a DNA registered database, because at one time of my life I was a criminal, and the way they got my DNA was through saliva. So I would bet it actually is.
Well, he blanked out.
I bet it's actually more accurate than a urinary test, because I have been part of seeing like no results in a urinary test because of like dilution that wasn't done at the testing facility.
Well, not to poo-poo what you're saying, but the reason why it's not used by law enforcement yet is because they haven't proved the ability to make it accurate enough for law enforcement to use it for like a DUI situation when you're driving. So if they haven't even gotten it that far yet, but yet you want to give someone a CDL off of this test, it's just not there yet.
Well,
it's like a lot
John,
of things in life. They're pushing a technology that's not quite there yet.
Have you ever been convicted of a DWI, John?
No, because I don't think and drive, and I don't do drugs and drive, and I think anybody that does isn't thinking straight.
I would agree. I would agree with that. But you understand, when you get charged with a DWI, it's not just off the breathalyzer, correct? You actually have to give them a blood sample. Like, so the
I understand
a breathalyzer that a police officer gives you isn't always credible even in court. Like, so like,
right, but what they do is they give you a breathalyzer, and then if you fail that,
yes,
yeah, but they give you a breathalyzer, and if you fail that, then they take you to a hospital where they take a blood test, or some police departments do it too. But that's what I'm saying. If it's not accurate to do a mouth swab yet, and they're not using it in law enforcement for that reason, then why are we even considering it for CDL drivers?
Girl in a semi inserts a comment. She says, isn't part of the issue that FMCSA can't find a baseline THC level? Can't claim a driver is high on weed if there's no baseline like alcohol has. Now, I got to wonder if she's referring to the oral test or is she referring to the urinalysis? Because either way, she makes a good point. If you can't use a control or have a starting point by which to say yes or no, and then it becomes an irrelevant test. So, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with that statement she makes.
Well,
DJ Jeff says the FMCSA approved it already.
Right. I was about to get to that. What's your thought there, Frank?
Well, this is on the topic here. The factor of it is there's a lot of drivers and people out there that are wanting to become truck drivers that do not understand also that those products that you can buy over the counter that's supposed to be CBD,
Mhm.
it will throw a drug test. It has been proven. And so if you're wanting to try to be a commercial truck driver or anything that
Right.
requires you in the commercial field, leave the CBD stuff alone.
Yeah. Most of this stuff you're talking about, Frank, is
Yeah.
pretty commonly covered in your baseline CDL training schools. You know, the way they've got the EDLT standards nowadays. They pretty much cover it. And if you got a decent instructor anyway, they cover, you know, the do not do's as it pertains to, you know, uh, drug testing and, you know, passing that part of it. So, you know, I'm sure anybody looking into will probably be told that. And if not, well, if you're high going into a drug test, you deserve what you get. What'd you say, John?
Let me jump in for 2 seconds. Sorry about that. Let me jump in for 2 seconds. Due to trucking issues, I'm probably not going to be on here very much longer, but I do want to say that if you're gonna, if I don't want to sound like I don't know, a stick in the mud. If you're at home and you're drinking a beer, I have no problem with that. If you're honestly, if you're lighting up a doobie, I don't care. It's at your house. It's not endangering anybody's life, dude. What you do on your own time is not my business, and I'm all for you. Do what you got to do.
Right.
But
Right.
when you get in a commercial truck, that's when it all changes. So that's why I'm kind of the stick in the mud about this conversation, because I don't care what you're doing when you're not in a commercial vehicle. When you're at home hanging out with your family or hanging out with your friends or doing what you do, good for you. Have a good time.
Right.
But if you are getting a commercial vehicle, I don't think you should be doing that stuff. And guys, remember, truckers are people too. I'll be tuning in from the background from this point on because I got to get driving. So I appreciate you having me on, boss man.
John, as always, my friend, you be safe. Everybody go and subscribe to his channel if you're not. Watch his videos. Very comical, very informative, and he is the man. Be safe out there, John. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we're going to continue with the conversation about drug testing. And we are at this point just asking the main question. Are oral testing, should it be, I should say, should it be something considered as a federal a switch? I mean, should it be now the national standard? That's my question. The question I posed up is, are they more accurate? And I think based on some of the research I've done, some of the things that I've come across in researching, my answer to that question is no. It is not more accurate. And therefore it gives me pause. You know, they're pushing for more of this in the idea that they want people who have medicinal need to use marijuana can then also get a license and be able to legally operate a motor vehicle. Myself, I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy. I think it's ridiculous to expect that people can honestly, safely operate under the influence. And I mean, let's be real here. When it comes to safety, less is more. That's always been my firm belief. Less is more. Okay. So when it comes to what I've found in terms of the world of trucking, all right, more harm would be served by allowing oral tests in lieu of urinalysis than what any benefit could have out of an oral test. There's less information, less stability, I think, less dependability. And I think the industry overall would be seriously harmed by making that kind of change. So on that statement, Frank, what say you?
Refresh me real quick.
In
Sorry.
terms of introducing oral tests in lieu of urinalysis, what we know about urinalysis and what we know about the current environment around oral testing, instead of using urinalysis and the current status quo, as it were, for detecting marijuana use, what say you?
I'll be honest with you. I've never had basically I guess it's a swab saliva test done
Yeah.
for anything. So I don't know how accurate that is. I honestly don't.
Yeah.
I know it's good for DNA testing, but as far as drugs, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how far back they're able to go or any of that. So I
Right.
really can't make an opinion on it.
According to JD, Jeff, he must be again a new viewer. It's the first time I've seen his tag around here. It says oral tests are approved by FMCSA already. Should have all options available to driver. Used oral tests at jobs for years and never had a false positive with anyone. Well, it's good to know. And so far as I know, yeah, they're optional. And I guess in terms of legality, some of the research I did says that in court cases, sometimes the findings behind oral testing can be dismissed and can be worked through on loopholes, whereas the standard with urinalysis are a little bit harder to fight in court. So that being said, you know, I fall back to the old-fashioned argument. Let's stick with what works. What do you think, Frank?
That I definitely would go with on. I mean, like I said, the only two I've ever done is urinalysis and hair follicle. So I know nothing about the oral. I'm not saying it doesn't work and isn't proven effective, and I'm not saying it is proven effective because I know nothing about it other than what we're discussing here. So if that comes about where I'm able to do that test, I guess we'll see how well it works. But just like with John, you know, I've been taking these tests for several years now, and they're pretty well one of them I can study and pass with no problem.
Yep. JD brings up an interesting point. I'm reading his comment right here, and I want to focus on something for a second. He says, don't want anyone using anything on the road, but the tests don't affect that. Oral tests will keep high drivers off the road. Yes, you are so correct. But you know what? I'm not worried about the high drivers. I'm worried about the habitual ones. The ones that got high a couple of days ago don't concern me. Okay? I mean, don't get me wrong. I want safe roads. And my ultimate aim and goal is just that, safe roads. I don't want somebody high behind the wheel. However, that being said, I'm looking a little deeper into this. All right? And my thing is, I don't want somebody finding a way to skirt the system and get away with it. If you're a habitual user, you've got a chronic problem, you need help. You don't need a job, you need help. And urinalysis so far is a standard by which most courts and most rehab centers work. They pop you, you test positive, you're in trouble. They pop you, you test negative, you're fine. Okay? But in addition, when you put the two together, the oral test only looks back maximum 48 hours, whereas a urinalysis will look back 30 to 60 days. If you got THC in your system and you're a habitual user, you're far more likely to be caught with a urinalysis or a blood test than you will be with an oral test. With an oral test, there is a serious likelihood that you can find a loophole or a byproduct or something in a store to help skirt the results or contaminate the results, thereby giving you a little bit of an edge over the system and making it a little problematic. And you know what? That to me is something I'd rather not play with. I would rather keep it safe. I would rather keep it simple. You agree, Frank?
I do.
Yes.
I really do because you know, as I was saying, you know, hair follicle, they can go back, I believe, up to a year or 6 months, something like that. So, I mean, they can see if you're a frequent user or it's just in your system a little bit. So that helps.
Right. Right. Well, I got a little bit of a better feeling about Amazon just reading this one. He says it's already approved as of last year. Amazon uses them. It's like a breathalyzer and it's safer because it keeps people that are on drugs. I think what you meant is it keeps people that are on drugs off. Yes. Oral testing is a good threat to levy over people, but again, I'm not sure myself about the. I mean, and honestly, I don't know it all. Really, I mean, I'm going to caveat this entire show with I'm not an expert. Okay, but there's the phone number at the bottom of the screen: 860-785-3547. If you know more than me, please prove me wrong or prove me right. That's the premise of this show. If you know better, tell me. I will entertain anything I don't know, and I love to learn. My thing is, though, I don't think oral tests are definitive enough, and I don't think they're legal enough yet to really rely 100% and furthermore keep the habitual users in check where they should be. Because that, at the end of the day, is what I want. I want those that have an issue to get the help they need. That has to be number one. Because when you do that, by default, you make the same streets I run every day a lot safer. And it's a lot better environment when I know that my wife and children are on that said road. And I don't have to worry about every Tom, Dick, and Harry smoking and driving, you know? So he's also giving me a compliment. Great live. They do test for fentanyl per the FMC rep on Sirius, by the way. Good. Seems more important. Got to run. Dude, love you being here. Thank you for your contribution. And you know what? The fact that they're testing for fentanyl, that is something that's rather new. I'm stoked about that because that is a increasingly more dangerous problem these
Yes.
days. Yeah. So
And several people overdose on it, and
yeah,
no longer with us here.
Yeah. So, what say you about this group's request? What are your overall thoughts in terms of what do you think their success may be? I know you touched on it the other night, but I thought, after having heard this information on this live that I've come up with, and some of the perspectives from both Fake Trucking and John there, what do you think their likelihood is that they might actually succeed in changing the standard for testing for marijuana in this country? You think they'll actually get anywhere with it?
That's a touchy one because, I mean, with everything going on politically, there's no telling. Laws are constantly being changed and modified. So it's hard saying. Myself, I'm hoping not. Really, I don't have a personal preference as far as if a person wants to do that, like John was saying, on their free time, but leave it out of the commercial industry because, the safer our roads are, the happier people are.
Yes. I fully agree with that. 100%. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about safety. I mean, we're out here to make a living. So, here I am looking above. I'm so used to looking at a different camera. In case you can't tell, I'm using a different camera. Like, I keep staring up. In case you're wondering why, that's why. And at the end of the day, you've got to be able to set your environment up in an optimized way to be able to make the most money possible. And you can't do that if there's chaos. You cannot possibly make a living if A, you don't know what tests are going to hit you, B, you don't know what the results are going to be, and you don't, I mean, and knowing that, just think about the possibility that these results could be altered or missed, and the guy next to you in that lane next to you could be running high. He could be skirting the law. He could be getting through with, whatever loophole that he sees is necessary. I mean, how many times, let's just put this into perspective for a minute. How many times, Frank, have you, let's say, in the last year, it's probably not the ideal ratio to ask for because you've kind of been in and out because of the health issues working. So let's say in the last couple of years, how many times have you been popped by the clearinghouse to actually go in and take a drug test? You find that you think that's like more of a random thing? Do you think it happens a lot, too much, not enough? What do you thought?
Well, I'd say within the last 3 or 4 years, I've had a couple of actual randoms. The rest have been just pre for starting a new job. But the factor of it is randoms. There's nothing that your company can do about it. It's just like, it comes up, you're picked. There you go. You've got to go take it. So, and if you
Yeah.
refuse, it's automatic, basically fail. And there goes against you.
Yeah, I mean that just goes without saying. I mean, number one, you're stupid if you refuse. It's just like refusing a breathalyzer if you're stopped, and given a field sobriety test. I think personally the current rules that are in place benefit the public. Usually I always give the regulators and lawmakers a lot of crap. But when it comes to a situation like this and rules like this, I think we're on the right track. So, I mean, again, I come back to the baseline question. Why fix something that works? Frank, I'll leave you with the last word on this entire topic. If you've got something to add or you got something you want to put in as a challenge, by all means, go ahead.
Quickly, I'll say basically, as we've been talking about, drugs not good for you, period. If it's a prescription drug, use it while the doctor prescribes it to you. Don't overuse it, don't abuse it. And of course, if it's prescribed to you and you cannot pass a DOT physical, then unfortunately you have to wait. Just as far as recreational